Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and what I wanted to do in this video was mostly just show some gameplay, but was really going to be talk about the first time I got to engage the Idris since it's been put into 3.12 for NPC usage. Now, to my knowledge, there's a few different ways to get one to spawn, with the first being that you have to have enough criminals in the area, in one specific area, and then that heat tallies high enough that the UEE sends one out to fight off you criminals. The other way, which was supposed to be the natural conclusion to this mission anyways, is the Arlington Gang missions, which you can get from Miles Eckert. And this is where you have to fight off the stolen Idris at the end after going through 5 or 6 other missions leading up to that moment. Now, if you're familiar with the prior patches and where it ended before with the Hammerhead, it's really that same chain of missions, with an additional mission at the end being the actual stolen Idris that you need to fight. Now, prices on all missions have gone up drastically, and when you look at this one in particular, I believe that the Idris Gang mission is paying out around 215,000 UEC, which is a lot of money, and that was supposed to be the way we really were supposed to find that Idris to fight, and is what we ended up doing. Now, I will say that there's a lot of things that are bugged right now, mostly being the Hammerhead mission prior, only paying out about 45 UEC. That's not 45,000, it's 45. And the Idris mission not completing even after we ended up destroying the ship, so we didn't get paid out at the end, though the fun was really in the journey along the way. So after talking to a few other players who have played this mission or just fought the Idris in general, it seems that bringing a few torpedo bombers is mostly easy mode, so we decided to start this with a few fighters and move up from there if necessary. Now, I think our group consisted of 2 vanguards, including myself, that were running mostly distortion to be able to get behind the ship, try and stay in a blind spot, unleashing the absolution distortion damage. We had a 600i with 3 size 5 attritions, I believe, and an arrow and a saber for fighter control, and then I think a few other ships that came in later, like a more combat-focused vanguard. Now, the fight went pretty well overall, with the Idris picking some of us off one at a time, with some pretty decent firepower from the turrets. Now, I was on the rear splashing the shields and the components with the size 5 distortion scattergun and was able to avoid taking damage for the most part. You just have to watch going above or below the ship. And then my hand just started to hurt. If you're familiar with the scatterguns, they don't allow you just to pull down the trigger and just let shots go, one after another. So every time I fired that round, it was a click while maneuvering and trying not to get killed. And by the time that the ship actually ended up, finishing me off, my hand and arm were just starting to get really sore. Overall, we were making slow progress and had ships continuing to die and rejoin the fight, so we kind of had this constant churn. And by the time that I had died, we were at about 50% health on the Idris, with the shields finally struggling to come back up. And that was the point where I decided to go and get the Retaliator and bring that along. And while the others had the Idris tied up pretty well, I was able to get a few volleys off. Now, the Idris did respond using noise countermeasures, so a few of my torpedoes went off target, but once I got in a little bit closer, while a few other torps were still flying around, I finally landed a shot, maybe 2 of them, which ended up taking down the Idris. I did have the Call to Arms mercenary mission active, so I think the total number of crew on board was 11 NPCs. Overall, the mission itself was a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun seeing the big Idris up close and personal and actually fighting back. It's big, it's a lot more maneuverable than you would think it would be. The turret placement does some pretty good damage, but the bigger problem in fighting it was really with the desync. There were several times that I ended up in front of the ship or to the side of it when I was actually matching speed behind it just a moment ago. The shields on the ship, have this really kind of cool purple splash when the distortion hits it. The weapons on the turrets do some pretty good damage, as do the fighters that escort it unless you deal with them. And while the railgun on the Idris is the primary threat, I don't think any of us really ended up on the business end of it. Being able to be in more agile ships, it was easy enough to stay away from the front of that one. Now, I have heard some conflicting reports on whether they actually shoot from the railgun or not, so it's kind of a big TBD there. I will say that we had a pretty good contingent of ships for this mission, and I would probably have opted for a little bit more focus on the rear of the ship, being able to deal damage faster, blow off some engines or at least damage them, and I probably would have opted to have more, kind of just actual firepower instead of distortion on the rear. So I'm going to keep trying to do this mission and do it from different perspectives to give you different looks at it, considering most of the perspective in this video was from behind the ship, but the explosion that you see at the end really makes it all worthwhile regardless, and it was just a lot of fun. So that's really it on this one. If you guys have questions on the mission or the Idris, just let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.